How would Roadblock stand up to TLC as both shows only had 2 weeks to build most of their matches? We'll tell you as WGS-TV reviews WWE Roadblock End of the Line for 2016. Hey YouTube, are you ready for your hot tag? Because if you aren't, it's definitely time to work.
This is Spielberg.
And this is Ashley Spears.
And we definitely watch WGS-TV. When we're on it, definitely when we're on it.
It doesn't really matter.
Not really. Respect my veterans!
What's up, guys? I'm the Russell Gamer. Welcome back to another episode of WGS-TV right here on YouTube.com/WrestleGamer as we take a look at WWE Roadblock and the Line. Just what were our thoughts and our opinions about it. We're fixing to tell you. But first, let me introduce the panel for this review. First off, ladies and gentlemen, you know him as our resident music mogul over on YouTube.com/LanceMossTV, the incomparable Lance Moss. Lance, how you doing?
Trying to stay warm because it's colder than some bitch.
And the co-host of Lance Moss TV and Friends every Wednesday night on Lance Moss TV, Steve is here. Steve, how you doing?
How are you?
One of the major concerns I have with WWE just overloading us, the fans, with 2 pay-per-views on the months that don't feature the Big Four is timing. Is 2 weeks enough time to build up matches and angles for a decent enough show? Both TLC and Roadblock both only had about 2 weeks to put their matches together. Now, we've already talked about TLC a couple of weeks ago, so now let's talk about Roadblock.
WGS-TV reviews WWE Roadblock End of the Line 2016.
The kickoff match was Big Cass taking on Rusev. You know, any chance we get to see Lana, Lance, on TV, it's a good thing.
True, I didn't get to see it because I was doing a little bit of thing with the family, but you know how you said they only had 2 weeks? I got a big difference. Raw has had 1 month because the last Raw pay-per-view that they had was Survivor Series. So they literally had a month and they put on that kind of a shit show. What the hell?
Well, any chance of seeing Lana, to me, was still a good thing, but seeing her wasn't enough to help this less than stellar match. Now, I wish I could talk more about this match, but there's really nothing to say other than it was a typical Raw match for a kickoff. The finish of the match was Big Cass getting counted out after checking on Enzo after he was attacked by Rusev. So I gotta say, Steve, this was just no better than a regular Monday Night Raw match.
I'd have to agree. It was very, very underwhelming.
Opening match of Roadblock was for the Tag Team Championship as the New Day defended the championships against Cesaro and Sheamus. On this past week's Sports Entertainment Tonight, one of the things we discussed when we looked at this match was the fact that since New Day broke Demolition's tag team title record, there was really no point in keeping the championships on them beyond that. In fact, this was a move that I saw coming for quite some time, and the fact that WWE did this didn't surprise me at all. What did surprise me, though, Steve, was how well this match was executed, and adding several false finishes, in my personal opinion, increased the crowd's excitement and definitely piqued my interest at the time.
It did. It did. I will agree that it was one of the better matches of the pay-per-view. Once my eyes had recovered from all the spotlights on Sheamus's incredibly pale body. I had thought for a moment he had gotten the quickening, but he hadn't actually beheaded anyone to my knowledge. So, but as far as the execution of the match, everybody did a great job. But I'm afraid that dropping the strap was a very predictable outcome for the match. But getting there was a pretty fun journey.
But how did they get there? Well, the actual finish of the match was Sheamus with a cradle pin on Kofi Kingston to pick up the win, as Cesaro and Sheamus become the new Raw Tag Team Champions. But now one has to wonder, Lance, did WWE put the titles on Cesaro and Sheamus just so they could drop it back to the New Day tonight on Raw?
Honestly, God, I hope not, because 400 some odd days is long enough of a damn title reign. Give it to somebody else.
And personally, I think it would hurt both Cesaro and Sheamus to pass them off as transitional champions, but that's just my personal opinion about it. Up next, we had Sami Zayn and Braun Strowman in a 10-minute match. Upon hearing that stipulation, just screamed out to me that this was going to go to the full time limit to play up to Zayn's ultimate underdog gimmick. Mick Foley's appearance with the towel during this match was indeed necessary, since Foley has been one of the main focal points of this angle over the past several weeks. Having Zayn not only survive the 10-minute time limit, but having him say on Raw Talk after the show that if he had another minute or so, he could have pinned Strowman, again plays up to him being the ultimate underdog from the underground, Steve, wouldn't you say?
I would, although I can't really say my own personal opinion that the match was very entertaining. It was fairly by the numbers, but if you're interested in that storyline, I'm sure that people are very entertained by what they saw. It's always a pleasure to see Mick Foley because I'm a fan of his from way back. Way back, when I say way back, I mean back in the Cactus Jack days. And it's always a pleasure to see him working, even if it is just in a general manager capacity.
One thing I did notice is that Zayn seemed to get into it with Booker T a bit on that show, but I'm not sure if that was going to go anywhere when I saw it. Now, up next, it was Seth Rollins taking on Chris Jericho. Rollins and Jericho seem to work well together, and their matches never disappoint. I believe some of the members of the YWC were expecting to see Triple H interfere in the match, and were very disappointed that he didn't show up. Personally, I think it would have been much too early for him to show up due to the fact that Rollins is still, Lance, really knee-deep in this angle with Chris Jericho.
Which, saying that, they need to start wrapping this angle up. Because, like I've said a few times, Chris Jericho ain't got that much time left with the company before he has to go on a tour.
The finish of the match was Rollins hitting the pedigree on Jericho to pick up the win. Following that, we had the WWE Cruiserweight Championship match with Rich Swann defending the championship against both TJ Perkins and D. Brian Kendrick. I really wasn't disappointed in this match as some other people were in the Hangout last night. My personal opinion is that this was a well-worked triple threat match involving the Cruiserweights. One botch, however, I do have to bring up is the botched leapfrog. I believe it was Rich Swann who tried to leapfrog an incoming Brian Kendrick, and Swann's knee caught Kendrick right in the face. Steve, I don't know if you saw that, but that was like probably one of the worst botches I've seen for the whole night.
I did, and I agree.
Yep. Now, the finish of the match was Swann hitting the Roundhouse kick on Perkins to pick up the win. So, Lance, now the question becomes, now that Kendrick and Perkins are out of the title picture, just who exactly gets the next push at the Cruiserweight Championship?
Well, since he made one hell of an impact last night, why the hell not Neville?
Well, you know what? You do have a point there, as he did come out and just absolutely obliterate everyone that he saw. He obliterated Kendrick, Perkins, and Swann. And so basically, we're looking at this as a heel turn. Now, Neville has worked heel before, when he was in a tag team in NXT with Corey Graves. And then for the majority of his NXT championship run, he was basically a face. And now they brought him to the main roster. He really hasn't gone over as a face as WWE would have hoped so. So turning him heel, to me, gives him a fresh start, Steve. And I think this is probably the one thing that Neville really needs if he wants to start getting more over on the crowd.
That is true. From what I've seen, and I base most of my experience on older wrestling, what they call classic wrestling, from the late 70s to the mid to late 90s, which was when I grew up watching wrestling. When you have a very effective heel turn, you can really give the crowd a brand new spin on someone's character, and that wrestler can actually enjoy a rejuvenation when their previous storylines have become too stale.
And prime example of that would have to be what happened with Neville, being the man that gravity forgot. He had a very hot start when he made his main roster debut and just kind of fizzled out and went nowhere. So maybe they can actually revitalize Neville and give him a new gimmick and something that he can actually work with, because he was effective as a heel on NXT and as a face. Now on the main roster, he really hasn't done much as a face, but maybe he can do more as a heel. The only thing is, I guess, only time will tell. Now, I'm going to catch a lot of slack for what I'm going to say about this next match. Up next, it was the Iron Man or Iron Woman match for the Raw Women's Championship as Sasha Banks defended the championship against Charlotte Flair. First off, I have a different opinion than some people about this, but to me, Charlotte and Sasha Banks are both equally doable in my personal opinion. However, I do favor Asuka over both of them.
You like that little bit of danger in there.
Damn right. As far as the overall match content, this match was this match as good as the match Sasha had with Bayley at NXT Brooklyn last year for the NXT Women's Championship? If I have to be honest, as I always am on here, my answer would be no. But I still enjoyed the match, even though some of the members of the live reaction hangout last night did not. Steve?
I love the inflection of that tone. Well,
go ahead.
In the tradition of being honest that you have established, I was not very impressed by this match due to two main reasons. One of which is their performance was not up to par. And the reason that it could be is because they gave the impression that they were either not in full physical form in order to perform the match for the duration, for the 30-minute time duration, and they actually became very tired and very exhausted way too early in the match, which was either their lack of physical conditioning or it was just going to that stage of the performance entirely too soon. And if that's the case, then it completely destroys the credibility of the match insofar as everything became increasingly sloppy later on. Then there was the incident in overtime when Sasha Banks had suffered an injury causing her to bleed profusely from her nose, which, being that I haven't seen anyone in WWE really get color all that often these days, was a little bit of a shock and a little bit of an interest, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to save the match. Charlotte Flair's facial expressions were cartoonish and ridiculous, and I just overall just wasn't very impressed.
On a side note, I've heard quite a lot of people in the YW suite complain over the fact of how the match went into overtime, mainly complaining about the fact that Sasha Banks was in the figure 4 leg lock for the longest time, about 4.5 minutes, and when she was put into the figure 8 with seconds left in the match, Sasha tapped out immediately to make the match at that time a draw. Personally, I don't see what the problem is, because that added to the drama of the match. So I think those of you out there who have an issue with that need to get over yourselves. Especially guys like Joe Cronin and JD from NY206. Get over it. Okay? Just because you guys think you have all these subscribers, you guys think you're the end-all, be-all of wrestling commentary. We all have our own personal opinions. It doesn't matter how many subscribers you have. An opinion is like an asshole. Everyone has one. And right now, mine is Lance. No offense, Lance.
Fuck you sideways, you motherfucker.
I didn't know you wanted to do that to me. Anyway, up next, it was the main event with the Universal Championship on the line as Kevin Owens defended the championship against Roman Reigns. Now, one of the things a lot of us were anticipating was Chris Jericho's appearance during this match. As it appeared, WWE was following through with the breakup and feud between these two. Seeing Chris Jericho hit the codebreaker on Owens to end the match in a disqualification really didn't surprise me, Lance, because I personally believe they need the Universal Championship in the feud between Owens and Jericho.
Yeah, I mean, I even said this on a prediction show or a preview show for Raw. I highly doubted that they were going to put the belt on Roman. And
go ahead.
And just like I said, they need to start. If they're going to do this, they need to ramp it up really quick, and because it needs to the angle. If they're going to make it Owens versus Jericho, presumptively for Mania, they need to start building it now.
Exactly, because shocker of shockers, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the whole rivalry between Owens and Jericho over the past month has been a swerve. Now, you know, it's not very often that WWE can get one over on your friendly neighborhood wrestle gamer, but I will admit, I was suckered in, as most of us were, by this swerve with Owens and Jericho. So I applaud WWE for that one. Now, with Rollins coming out to make the save as both Owens and Jericho got beat down and were put through tables, Shield style, leads me to believe, Steve, that WWE is reuniting these two as 2/3 of the Shield in this angle with Owens and Jericho. But here's my question to you, Steve, is how far will they go with this angle?
That I cannot predict, although I see that as a very distinct possibility, if not a probability. I think fans of the Shield would like to see a full 3-man Shield reunion, but with one of the key members being over on SmackDown right now, I don't see that as happening anytime soon. But given that they did the swerve with Jericho and Owens, anything seems to be possible. And quite frankly, as good a wrestler as Jericho is, and as sometimes Kevin Owens can be, and being that both Rollins and Reigns work very well together as a team, I wouldn't mind seeing that. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it would be a thing. I think it's maybe something that fans are anticipating because they would like to see that happen, but I can't honestly say if that's the direction creative is going.
I guess everything hinges on what they do tonight on Monday Night Raw. Now, before we get into our overall scores and our picks for best and worst match of Roadblock, we're going to go to the Facebook page, because a lot of you guys on the Facebook page had a lot to say about what happened at Roadblock last night. First off, we're going to start with Jeremy Alexander Baltimore. He gives the pay-per-view a score of 3.5 out of 10. Thomas Santone scores it a 9 out of 10 and said it was a wonderful show. Andrew Charles Sennett said 8 out of 10, only because I wanted Reigns as champion. Shame Sasha Banks didn't get that win, but that Iron Man match was awesome. Joshua South scored it 9 out of 10 and had some derogatory comments towards Jeremy Alexander Baltimore, but we're going to leave that out of the review. Kirsty Duck scores the pay-per-view a 9 out of 10 and said it was amazing. Only downfall was Big Cass and Rusev being on the pre-show and match ending too fast. Amazing ending to the show and an amazing start to the pay-per-view, crowning new tag team champions. Christy, I gotta agree with you to that. It was a unique ending to the show, and the tag team championship match was a really strong opening for Roadblock. Daniel Kahn Nelson scores it an 8 out of 10 and said, pretty solid show. I need to learn to read. It doesn't get the 9 for me due to 3 major botches and some very poorly written material to be recited by the talent at certain points of the show. There was also just a hint to overacting during the Braun Strowman match between Mick and Sami Zayn. Do you guys want to respond to that at all, what Daniel Kahn just said about that? Guess not. Michael Mason scores it a 7 out of 10 and says, I don't get why they had Strowman lose like that when he's clearly getting somewhere with his character. And constantly, well, he says tout. I don't understand why. The Sasha Charlotte match was something big, like in the chapter when you're going to keep sticking it to 50-50 and Charlotte keeping her pay-per-view streak alive instead of Sasha finally beating her when it counted and giving someone else for her to feud with for a while, like the returning Emma or Nia Jax. Instead, it's going to keep being Sasha and Charlotte hot potatoing the title still. At least Alexa has kept it so far on SmackDown instead of hot potatoing it right back to Becky. I gotta disagree with you on that one, Michael, because one of the things they did say last night during the match, that this was the definitive end match between these two, and now that they put the title back on Charlotte, I want to say there's a 95% chance, Lance, that the next person getting the push towards the title is Bayley.
Well, you know my theory on this. If they do that, the whole Royal Rumble, where one being men's, one being women's, I'd almost guarantee Sasha's winning and we'll see a rematch.
Alan McPhee says, what a sellout by Sasha. Alan, I would like to ask you, if you're watching this right now, either on YouTube or on the Facebook page, if you can please elaborate what you mean by that. And finally, a very good friend of mine, Mean Matt Dunn, said, the outcomes weren't bad, but I would still like the Sasha Bayley for Mania. The conclusion was interesting. Before seeing this, I would have went for a straight up breakup of Jericho, but this ending keeps the continuity of the former Shield associates intact, keeps Rollins perhaps in the title picture, and could still set up Jericho and Owens down the line. Very good. I gotta agree with you to an extent there, Matt. And again, like I said earlier, I think everything hinges on what they do tonight on Monday Night Raw involving these four guys. So I guess the only thing we can do is wait and see what they're going to do. But anyway, overall score on Roadblock gets a 2.75 out of 5 with best match of the night going to, and I know I'm going to get some slack from you guys about this, but hey, it's my review. The Iron Man match for the Raw Women's Championship with worst match of the night going to the kickoff match with Rusev and Big Cass. I'm sorry, but not even Lana could have saved that one. Lance, over to you, your overall score and your picks for best and worst match of Roadblock.
Well, I'll go 5 out of 10. Best match, I'll go with the tag titles. And worst, I'll go with the Braun, Strowman, Sami, Zayn.
Okay, and finally, Steve, we go to you. Overall scores and your picks for best and worst match of Roadblock.
I give it a 3 out of 10. Not very satisfying or entertaining overall. I would have to say that the New Day losing the Tag Team Championship was probably the best executed match of the night. I would have to say that the worst match for me is probably Strowman and Zayn, although there were other aspects of the Iron Man match that I don't care for. There were still some interesting moments there, whereas Strowman and Zayn really wasn't that interesting.
Well, guys and gals, that's been our thoughts and our opinions, our review of WWE Roadblock End of the Line. What we want to know from you guys out there, the viewers and subscribers, your thoughts on WWE Roadblock End of the Line. What were your overall scores, and what are your picks for best and worst match of Roadblock? I want to know what you guys out there have to say, and as always, I respond to any and all comments here on YouTube, so be sure you put your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget, if you like this video, be sure you slam that like button like a champ. You can find both Steve and Lance on Lance Moss TV. Lance, what can fans expect to see when they come visit your channel over on youtube.com/Lance Moss TV?
Well, build review, guitar builds, equipment reviews, NASCAR reviews, a bunch of other stuff, and every once in a while I go live on Lance Moss TV and friends. Never know who's going to show up, but usually Steve will.
Yep, definitely. So I highly recommend you guys check them out every Wednesday night on youtube.com/Lance Moss TV. And if you guys want to see more of wrestling talk with awesome gameplays, you know the way you got to do it. You got to hit that subscribe button down below. So with that being said, for the incomparable Lance Moss from Lance Moss TV and our new friend Steve from Lance Moss and TV and Friends, I'm your friendly neighborhood wrestle gamer, and I will see you next time right here on WGS-TV. Bye, guys!